We fear loneliness, as if it's a curse, yet it holds a hidden gift that most never discover. Loneliness isn't emptiness, it's a sacred invitation to meet yourself beyond the noise of the world. In solitude, you stop chasing validation and start finding your truth. The world teaches you to escape yourself, but loneliness brings you back home. This isn't isolation, it's transformation. If you dare to sit with your solitude, you'll awaken a strength and clarity that no crowd can give you. Your real power begins the moment you embrace being alone, because that's where your real self lives. When you experience loneliness, it feels as though you've been cut off from the world, distant, unnoticed, and perhaps even unwanted. But what if this feeling isn't meant to crush you, but to reconnect you with something deeper? Most people spend their lives performing for others, adapting to expectations, hiding their fears behind smiles, and wearing masks to fit in. They lose sight of who they really are beneath the layers of approval-seeking and social pressure. Loneliness strips those layers away. In the quiet moments when you're alone, when no one is watching and there is no one to impress, you finally meet the raw version of yourself. It's in those moments that you come face to face with your own heart, not the version shaped by society, but the pure, untouched essence of who you are. The discomfort of loneliness is often your resistance to facing this unfiltered self. We live in a world that constantly tells you to be busy, to be liked, to be connected, and to never sit alone with your thoughts. That's why loneliness feels painful, because it forces you to meet the parts of yourself you've ignored. But the truth is, those parts are not your enemy. They are the lost fragments of your authentic self waiting to be embraced. When you stop fighting loneliness and start sitting with it, you discover pieces of your identity that you've forgotten. You may realize how much of your life has been driven by fear of rejection or by the need for validation from others. You begin to see how often you've silenced your own voice just to fit into the crowd. In solitude, there's no crowd to please, no expectations to meet. There is only you and the honest reflection staring back at you. And though this may feel unsettling at first, it is also deeply freeing, because in that space, you start to understand what you truly value, what you genuinely believe, and what actually matters to you, not what you've been taught to believe by others. You begin to hear your inner voice, without the static of the world drowning it out. That voice, once buried beneath noise and fear, becomes your guide. It reminds you of your strength, your worth, and your potential. Loneliness is not a punishment. It is a sacred opportunity. It's the world's way of pressing pause on your distractions, so you can reconnect with yourself. When you embrace this gift, you stop seeking others to define you, and you start defining yourself. You become comfortable in your own skin. You learn to stand on your own feet, without needing constant support or approval. You realize that your worth isn't tied to who accepts you, or who stays with you. Your worth is tied to your existence alone. The most authentic connection you will ever have is the one you build with yourself, and that connection is forged in the quiet moments of solitude. Instead of running from loneliness, try to meet it with open arms, because that's where the real you is waiting. Solitude is often misunderstood as weakness or emptiness, but in truth, it is the birthplace of emotional independence and inner strength. When you spend time alone, without the constant presence or approval of others, you begin to build a relationship with yourself that cannot be shaken by outside forces. Most people unknowingly depend on others to regulate their emotions. They seek comfort, validation, or distraction from friends, family, or even strangers on social media. This dependence makes them vulnerable, because the moment others pull away or fail to meet their expectations, they feel abandoned, lost, or broken. But solitude teaches you a different path. It shows you how to rely on yourself for emotional balance and resilience. When you embrace being alone, you slowly detach from the habit of outsourcing your peace of mind. You stop needing others to fix your sadness, validate your worth, or fill your emptiness. You begin to find peace in your own presence, learning that it is possible to experience joy, calm, and fulfillment without external validation. This emotional independence doesn't mean you shut people out or reject relationships. It means you stop clinging to them as your only source of happiness. You create a foundation within yourself that remains stable no matter who comes or goes in your life. This inner stability becomes your quiet strength, allowing you to handle challenges, rejections, and disappointments without falling apart. True strength isn't about never feeling pain or fear. It's about standing firm when those feelings arise, knowing that you can hold space for them without crumbling. Solitude becomes your training ground for this kind of strength. When you are alone, you have the chance to face your emotions head-on without numbing them or passing them off to someone else. You learn how to sit with discomfort, how to soothe your own heart, and how to be your own source of encouragement. Over time, this practice builds an inner confidence that no external force can easily shake. You also realize that much of your previous suffering came from the belief that you needed someone else to make you whole. But solitude reveals a profound truth. You were always whole. You just never gave yourself the chance to see it. By standing alone, you dismantle the illusions of neediness and dependence that have held you captive. You recognize your capacity to survive, to endure, and even to thrive on your own terms. This realization is empowering. It turns solitude from something you once feared into something you now cherish. In solitude, you become your own friend, your own comfort, and your own guide. You stop fearing loneliness because you have discovered the incredible power of emotional independence. You are no longer shaken by who stays or who leaves because your strength comes from within. Solitude teaches you that you are not just enough, you are complete. And that understanding unlocks a level of peace and strength that no relationship or external approval could ever give you. When you allow yourself to spend time in solitude, a powerful transformation begins. Your self-awareness sharpens in ways that simply cannot happen in the noise of everyday life. The world is filled with distractions, expectations, and endless demands for your attention. From the moment you wake up, you're bombarded with messages telling you who you should be, how you should act, and what you should want. Over time, this constant noise drowns out your inner voice until you begin to mistake other people's opinions for your own truth. But when you choose solitude, you step away from that noise. You give yourself the rare opportunity to listen deeply to your thoughts, feelings, and desires without outside influence. In that quiet space, you start to notice patterns in your thinking and behaviors that you never saw before. You begin to see your fears, your hopes, your wounds, and your dreams with new clarity. Self-awareness is like turning on a light in a dark room. Things that were hidden in the shadows suddenly become visible. You start to recognize why you react the way you do in certain situations, why some relationships drain you, or why certain goals genuinely matter to you while others don't. This awareness helps you understand not only your strengths, but also your weaknesses, your wounds, and your blind spots. It gives you the insight to see where you've been holding yourself back, and where you've been living according to someone else's script instead of your own. Without solitude, it's easy to get stuck in autopilot, repeating the same patterns, chasing the wrong things, or living a life that doesn't truly reflect who you are. As you become more self-aware, you also start to connect with your true purpose. Purpose isn't something you stumble upon by accident. It's something that reveals itself when you peel back the layers of distraction and illusion. In solitude, you have the space to ask yourself the deep questions that really matter. What do I value most? What kind of life do I want to live? What legacy do I want to leave behind? What am I passionate about that I've been ignoring? These aren't questions you can answer in a rush or with half your attention. They require silence, reflection, and honesty, the kind that only solitude can give you. This process isn't always comfortable. Sometimes, solitude reveals things you'd rather not face, regrets, fears, unresolved pain. But even these discoveries are gifts because they allow you to heal, to grow, and to make conscious choices moving forward. You stop drifting through life reacting to everything and start living with intention. You learn to align your actions with your values and your goals with your heart. This alignment gives your life a sense of meaning and direction that no amount of external success can replace. In solitude, you move beyond surface-level living and enter a deeper connection with yourself. You begin to live not for approval or appearances, but from a place of truth and purpose. Self-awareness becomes your compass, guiding you to a life that is fully your own, authentic, meaningful, and deeply fulfilling. Most people fear loneliness because they believe it means being weak, unwanted, or forgotten. They see solitude as a void, a dark space filled with nothing but pain and emptiness. But the truth is, when you learn to embrace solitude instead of running from it, something extraordinary happens. Loneliness transforms from a source of suffering into a source of personal power. At first, the silence of being alone may feel uncomfortable, even unbearable. The urge to distract yourself, to reach out to others, or to escape into entertainment can be overwhelming. That's because you're used to running from discomfort. But when you stop running and choose to sit quietly with yourself, you begin to realize that solitude isn't empty at all. It is full of lessons, insights, and strength that you've never tapped into before. In solitude, you discover that your fears lose their power over you when you stop feeding them with avoidance. The pain you thought would break you begins to soften when you face it directly. You learn that your heart is stronger than you believed, and your mind is more resilient than you imagined. The very act of embracing solitude builds a quiet, steady confidence within you. You no longer feel desperate for constant company or validation because you have learned how to stand strong in your own presence. That strength is not loud or boastful, it is silent, deep, and unshakable. As you spend more time in solitude, you notice that you become less affected by the opinions and judgments of others. The fear of rejection or criticism begins to fade because you have built a solid connection with yourself that no one can take away. You no longer depend on others to feel worthy, accepted, or complete. This independence is empowering. It frees you from the chains of seeking approval or chasing relationships that drain you. You understand that it's not about cutting people out of your life, but about no longer being controlled by the fear of losing them. Solitude also helps you tap into a deeper source of creativity, wisdom, and intuition. When you're constantly surrounded by noise, it's hard to hear your inner guidance. But in the quiet moments alone, your intuition speaks more clearly. You begin to trust yourself more, make decisions with confidence, and act from a place of inner knowing rather than external pressure. This connection to your inner wisdom becomes a powerful tool for navigating life's challenges with grace and strength. Eventually, you realize that the loneliness you once feared has become your ally. It has taught you how to find peace in your own company, how to draw strength from within, and how to live authentically without fear. The transformation of loneliness into personal power is not something that happens overnight. It is a gradual process of facing yourself, embracing your emotions, and learning to trust your inner resilience. But once it happens, you are no longer the same. You stand taller, walk stronger, and face life with a quiet power that comes from knowing you are enough with or without anyone beside you.